This is Jens Johansson, and you are watching Alejandrosis. Please come to our show in Colombia next year.
Stratovarius es uno de los conjuntos más famosos en la historia del power metal. Este quinteto finlandés es responsable de la revitalización del género a partir de una explosiva combinación de hard rock, elementos progresivos, aires sinfónicos y metal neoclásico. La banda debutó discográficamente a finales de los años 80 y al día de hoy cuenta con 16 álbumes de estudio. El más reciente de ellos se publicó en 2022 y es un buen motivo para que estén de vuelta aquí en Concierto como parte del cartel del Bogotá Metal Fest, donde compartirán escenario con la dupla alemana de Accept y Gravedigger. En el canal de Alejandrosis, a manera de antesala de lo que será una noche épica de heavy metal, quiero compartirles nuestra conversación con Jens Johansson, teclista de Stratovarius por cerca de 30 años. Espero sea de su agrado. No olviden suscribirse a este canal para estar atento a todo nuestro contenido. Para ello, activen las notificaciones y si les gusta este video, no duden en compartirlo y darnos un me gusta. Survive es el título del más reciente álbum de Stratovarius. Contiene 11 canciones y cerca de 1 hora de duración. Este trabajo ha contado con favorables críticas por parte de la prensa especializada y, lo más importante, el beneplácito de sus fanáticos. Comencemos la entrevista con Jens Johansson preguntándole acerca de este regreso discográfico, ya que si tenemos en cuenta su álbum anterior, Eternal, fue lanzado en un ya lejano 2015.
I think there was like one gap. Well, between 2005 and 2008 gap, but it was not as long. I think that we were not really, I mean, it's not really a comeback because we have been doing a lot of live work. We have played live a lot. But the thing is, for me, it's like this. When you record an album nowadays, because you don't make so much money from it, I mean, it's almost like you are losing money to record an album. So the way I thought about it anyway was that if we record an album, we should really make sure that we spend as much time on writing as we can. And to me, the best way to write, sitting in our own little room, writing songs, and then putting them in Dropbox or whatever, and then you have things out with the vocalist, and we write lyrics. Like, I mean, for instance, this album, all the lyrics were written before we started recording the drums, which is kind of unusual for us. I think also in the Tolkki days, we didn't do it this way, but I think this time, somehow, to me, the songs were like finished when we started recording them, and it was also very clear which songs we should record. So we didn't record like a bunch of extra songs or spend time recording extra songs. I mean, that was like kind of like an extra song. It's called Heroes. And for some reason, I actually disagreed with Matthias on this, but it appears now on the vinyl. It's like a bonus track for the vinyl. I still think it's a good song. He was like, no, I don't like the song anymore. Like, but I think it's actually quite a good song. I liked all of the songs that we put on this album now. So to me, it was like kind of succeeding this way, that we really focused on writing before recording. This way, it's better, because we have really made sure that we had all the songs completed with vocal melodies and lyrics and everything, like tested. And Timo had a lot to say about it too. Like, he was like, no, I don't like this, or I like this. Like, you can test immediately, of course, when you are working with a singer directly.
Wonderful to hear that. You said it's not good money to put an album in those times. What is your position about the Spotify and the short time to expose your material? The people, it's fast in the consuming way nowadays, we very quickly pass to another record, maybe sometimes even didn't hear the album completely. So what is your position about the streaming services? And you talk about the vinyl. I want to know what you think also about the return of this wonderful format.
So I was always against Spotify, but of course I realized I was fighting a bit with the label about this stuff, because they were like, oh, Spotify, and I was like, those guys. And I think with metal, people actually have stayed a little bit with the physical format, because it's like more old school people, and you have this old vibe where you actually buy a physical thing and you listen to the whole album. You know, you do this like album listening thing. Of course, on Spotify, you can pick your tracks and you end up on playlists. So it's important to think, I mean, when you make the album, it's important to think both ways. I mean, we made something like 25 ideas or full songs, and we then picked what we thought was absolutely the most complete or the most best songs. So every song could end up on some kind of playlist if we are lucky. But still, I think I'm an older guy, and I still think also in terms of the album. I'm not myself a huge fan of vinyl, because I'm old enough to have suffered from vinyl when it was like, you know, people treated their vinyl records a lot worse than they do today, and they were scratched, and you know, you played them 1,000 times, and you know, that's a format. It's just kind of like shitty format. CD is actually, like, for me, much better, because you can't scratch them, and then they are smaller, and you know, you can put them in your pocket if you have a kind of big pocket. Of course, the album art is smaller and stuff like that, but I was really happy when the CD came, because then I could, you know, you could buy this like portable CD player, and you could have it in a hotel room, and you could bring CDs. You know, those somehow a wonderful thing for me anyway, as a consumer. But of course, I realized this vinyl thing, it becomes even more of a, you know, how do you call it? It's like a ritual. Of course, nowadays when you buy a vinyl, you might not scratch it up the same way that we did when we were kids. Of course, you would just like throw them across the room and like, you know. Yeah. So they will bet. Spotify is like a little bit of an evil, but of course, I can't spend my life fighting this windmill. So of course, we make an album also for Spotify, because we love our label, and the label likes Spotify. So, you know, but we don't make any money from it. So it's not for the money anyway. We will lose doing this. So let's just make sure that we are super happy about the material, because we should do it less often, and we should just like really make sure, spend time to make it good impact. I mean, musical impact as we want. And I think we did, you know. Okay. But okay. I have to say, this like 7 years. It took like maybe 3 years, and of course then there was the pandemic also in between. Worst part of the pandemic, nobody could travel, of course. Matthias was stuck in Brazil. I was stuck here in Sweden, and you know, nothing happening.
Timo Kotipelto es el vocalista del grupo desde el año 1995, cuando debutó en el disco Four Dimension. Desde entonces, su prodigiosa garganta permanece indemne al paso del tiempo, y en Survive lo demuestra una vez más. Yo quiero saber cuál es la técnica o secreto para mantener su voz en tan buen estado. Esto nos contó su compañero de banda.
Of course, I mean, he's a serious guy. I mean, he takes a long walk with his dog, and he works out, and you know, like, he's like he takes his job very, very seriously. But then I have to say also, this like writing process, it impacted this because of course, if I'm writing a song or Matthias is writing a song for Timo, we don't always know in our head how it feels to sing it when it sounds good. So of course, when you are testing it, when you are in the same room and you are saying like, hey, can you sing this like, oh, fuck me like an animal or something, you know, whatever. And he's like, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard. You know, I can't sing this. The lyrics are stupid. The melody is too high or it's too low, or, you know, it doesn't, the breathing is wrong. Of course, you get immediate feedback. So I think also he sounds good on this album because of the writing, because we spent time writing with him. But nobody's getting any younger, of course. So he can't sing as high as he could like maybe 20 years ago. But then we don't write the songs that way nowadays, you know.
Estamos muy cerca de disfrutar con la energía de Stratovarius en vivo. Tengamos presente que esta fue una de las primeras agrupaciones extranjeras en venir a este país cuando nadie lo hacía. Su debut sucedió la noche de Halloween del año 2000 en el ya desaparecido Teatro Lux de Bogotá. Acerca de este inminente concierto en el marco del Bogotá Metal Fest y sus memorias de aquella primera visita, Johansson nos reveló lo siguiente.
We have this like legacy, so we still have to play all those, or many of those like old songs, because of course if you're a fan and you want to, there's like this nostalgic angle. We play like 4 or 5 songs from the new album, I would imagine. because people maybe know them. Of course, if you're playing a festival with like 100 other bands, you want to do more material that they have heard, you know, like, so you might play less of the completely new album. But let's see, you know.
Para finalizar, tengamos en cuenta que este músico, nacido en Estocolmo, Suecia, tiene una hoja de vida impresionante. A principios de los años 80 se mudó a California para tocar junto al legendario guitarrista Yngwie Malmsteen en su banda Rising Force. Y a finales de esa misma década se unió al inmortal Ronnie James Dio para tocar en su disco Lock Up the Wolves de 1990. Presten mucha atención a lo que nos va a contar Jens Johansson.
That's great. I mean, we were all young, and you know, of course, the 80s was a special time somehow. We were somehow part of this wave that was breaking out. I mean, it was kind of mainstream. I mean, it's like hair metal was mainstream, and Dio had sold, I think, platinum in the United States, which is like 1 million copies. It sold a lot, this stuff too. So of course, it was a bit crazy. Especially Yngwie. I mean, Dio's situation was not crazy at all. He was like quite sensible. But the Yngwie thing was a little bit out of hand. Of course, we were young, and I think he's kind of difficult on a good day, and he was drinking a lot and, you know, doing drugs and whatnot. So it was a little bit crazy, but I still love the music that we made. I mean, some of the stuff we almost went gold with one album with Yngwie. It was called Odyssey. And I think that's like the peak of the hair metal. It was like 1980. Even though we weren't exactly hair metal, we were trying to be it a little bit, and we had this like curly hair type of thing. But I think we were somehow like progressive metal people at heart. You know, Ingo was playing all this fast stuff, and so we never really made it in the States. You know, like some of these other bands, like Cinderella or whatever, Poison. But it was a great time. I mean. And I never had any problem with Yngwie. I mean, he had problem with other people, you know, like journalists and stuff. So, but we guys in the band, we got along really well. We were like 3 Swedish guys, first 4 Swedish guys, and then 3 Swedish guys. So we would speak Swedish all the time, and, you know, annoy all the Americans, you know. But like I said, it was very chaotic. And I left that band, was it like 1989? And I joined Dio's band, and it was like everything was super easy. Like super gentleman, and, you know, everything was like, oh, it could be like this too, because I came from this like so total traveling chaos with Yngwie. I mean, it was like 4 or 5 years of complete chaos. He would switch managers like 3 or 4 times. There would never be any money, and, you know, there was like, he was beating people up and fighting journalists, and, you know, complete chaos. And to come to Dio's band, it was like really like coming to this like, I don't know, like an oasis from the desert or something. It was a really nice feeling, and he was a super nice guy. So I got along very well with him too. Unfortunately, I only did 1 album with Dio because I don't know if, like I maybe said, but that was like 1990, and this grunge was coming. So even though that album I did with Ronnie, it sold quite okay, but he had sold platinum. So the label was like, well, why aren't you selling this album? Is a flop. So they convinced him to join Black Sabbath after that. So I think he made 1 or 2 albums with Black Sabbath, and then he reformed Dio after that a few years later. But by that time I had already joined Stratovarius, and he asked me to join, and I was like, oh shit, I can't do that. I'm with these other guys now. So it's like, but really nice guys, all of them. I mean, Yngwie is a nice guy too. I mean, you might not believe it from his rumor, but he's a good guy. Okay. He's not evil. He was just very chaotic. And now he doesn't drink at all. He's like completely sober.
Estupendo, amigas y amigos. Ahí queda la propuesta sobre la mesa. Un triple combo europeo con bandas dueñas de grandes repertorios y estilos muy característicos. Stratovarius, Gravedigger y Accept. En los comentarios, por favor, indíquenme en cuál es su favorita y si hubo algo en esta entrevista con Jens Johansson que llamó su atención. Estaré muy atento. Mi nombre es Alejandro Bonilla, soy periodista musical. Me encuentran en redes sociales como Alejandrosis. Quiero invitarlos a que se suscriban a este canal si aún no lo han hecho. Ayúdenos a crecer, tenemos muy buen contenido. Muy pronto nos vemos de nuevo aquí, con más antesalas de conciertos, álbumes clásicos y estrenos, todo lo que nos gusta, el rock and roll. Hasta pronto.